You are unsure if you are perfectionist or not, or if perfectionism is good or bad. You are at the right place. We will together answer these questions today. And that's not all. We will dive deep into typical causes of perfectionism. We will start with perfectionism checklist, and using this checklist, you will be able to see whether you are a perfectionist or not. Then, we will focus on clarifying whether perfectionism is good or bad, and we will also touch upon some scientific research on that topic. Finally, we will dive deeper into the causes of perfectionism, and we will reveal that in the last section of the video. The perfectionism checklist will help you determine whether you are a perfectionist or not. So let's dive into key characteristics of a perfectionist. 1. I set exceedingly high standards for myself and others. I am overly critical and looking for faults in myself and others. I do not trust others will do anything the way I would. I struggle to accept compliments and recognize achievements. And I feel anxious when I am not performing up to standard. If you feel like it, you may stop the video for a moment and ponder over the key characteristics. But please have in mind that only having high standards doesn't mean you are a perfectionist. Perfectionism comes with excessiveness in high standards, criticism, and most important, it is characterized by anxiety. Now that we have more clarity on whether you're a perfectionist, let's focus on clarifying whether perfectionism is good or bad. Some of us may be saying, I am a perfectionist with pride because we believe it comes with having high standards. However, these high standards do not mean we adhere to them. If you're a perfectionist, we are prone to be caught up into doing small things repetitively, even procrastination, and we are not able to deliver to those high standards. So only having high standards doesn't mean much if you're not able to rise up to them. As perfectionists, we also do not trust others that they will perform the tasks up to standards that we set. So we may take more responsibilities on ourselves and overburden ourselves, even come to the stage of burnout. One of the most important characteristics of perfectionists is also that they live with anxiety. And we all know that that doesn't feel good. Finally, who would want to have an overly critical colleague, friend, brother, sister, partner? If it goes to extreme, perfectionism also may lead to attempts to release the pressure in covert ways. For example, we may put blame on others for something that we were responsible for, or we can even lie about what we have done to cover up for our mistakes. Scientific research backs up what we have just said. Research studies found that perfectionism had little to no correlation with performance. So what do these studies say? Perfectionists tend to spend more time on tasks. They are prone to procrastination. They are not the best team players. Perfectionists often consider others incompetent, and they do not trust that others will do the tasks the right way. As a result, perfectionists take on too many responsibilities on themselves and overburden themselves, which at the end leads to burnout and lower performance. After all this, what would we say about perfectionism? Is it a keeper? Seems not. Now let's dive into typical causes of perfectionism. Roots of perfectionism can be found in our childhood experiences or in our genetics. The traumatic situations in which we felt rejected, undervalued, or neglected create deep sense of unworthiness. And perfectionism actually rises out of this sense of unworthiness because we want to prove that we are worthy. We might also know what rejection and neglect create in a child. It creates the feeling that the child will lose support and may even die because children are fully dependent on parents. And then, no wonder if anxiety kicks in. In those traumatic experiences, we might have formed belief that certain faults of ours or imperfections led to rejection, and we start to avoid them at any cost. Again, perfectionism kicks in to avoid any faults and imperfections. We develop excessively high standards, and we form certain type of inner critic that reminds us on what is not good and what is not perfect all the time. It may seem that perfectionism will help us, but perfectionism often keeps us in the loop of excessively high standards, criticism, so we cannot adhere to those high standards, so we feel anxious and we just go into this loop. Have you ever been stuck in one phase because of your perfectionism? You're redoing and redoing and redoing the same thing over and over again. That's an example of this loop. If we are trapped in perfectionism, we may feel overwhelmed and anxious. Being a perfectionist doesn't seem to be a keeper. It is something that we need to look into and transform. But we need to make sure we understand the difference between having high standards and being an anxious, critical perfectionist with excessively high standards. If you want to leave perfectionism trap, there are plentiful methods out there, including Paradox 6. I have worked with numerous clients on their anxiety that causes perfectionism, and we succeeded to transform it. For more information on the Paradox 6 methods and sessions, please see the links in our description.